we see how the hatred, vitriol, and sorrow between the two former best friends has already infected the next generation. Welcome back, House of the Dragon fans. It is time to talk episode 8, The Lord of the Tides. Every week we gather right here to discuss all the House of the Dragon episodes and spoilers, and today we meet up with our final time jump of the season, jumping another 6 years into the future. And this is the first time jump that doesn't really work for me because we don't get time to acclimate to any of these characters between the last two episodes where we meet the new generation of Velaryons and Targaryens and these new versions of these characters, where so much has changed between the climactic episode 7 and now this new era of Targaryens where the new generation is coming into positions of power themselves. And I understand that this series is much more about the Targaryen Dynasty itself over any of the specific characters across generations. And I don't want to come across as if I think this episode is bad, because it isn't. Some of the scenes in this episode are probably the best in this entire series. But it's moments in between last week's episode and this that I'm missing, because we are thrust into a completely new world where Corlys Velaryon has disappeared, Daemon and Rhaenyra are not only married, which we saw last week, but now have had children of their own, and she's pregnant yet again, and Viserys is withering and dying day by day, where the man can barely walk at this point, and still has one of the most powerful moments in the entire series that I definitely want to talk about. Meeting up with all the new older Velaryon and Targaryen children, and even having one of the most awkward dinners in the history of television. There's just so much new in the subtext of this series when it comes to the character dynamics and the conflicts at hand. We really needed some more connective tissue between last week's episode that so much drastically changed, and now this, where things are completely different from the changes of last week's climactic ending. So it just needed a little bit more connective tissue between episode 7 and 8. But again, I don't want to come across that I think this episode is bad, because it isn't at all. But as always, we need to go through character chapters, or in this week's case, we're going to go through chapters, because essentially we can break this episode down into two parts. The first part is the Tribunal of the Velaryons with Rhaenys and Vaemond about who is taking up the title of Lord of the Tides. Corlys has disappeared at sea in battle. They don't know where he is or if he's coming back, and so they summon a tribunal to take hold of title of Lord of the Tides, as Vaemond does not recognize Rhaenyra's children as Velaryons. He sees them as bastards and even calls them out on it, even calling Rhaenyra a whore, and that costs him his head in front of everyone. I love that moment where tensions are boiling up so much at such a rapid pace. You immediately know this show tells you with its immaculate storytelling and just the looks between characters that this is going to go wrong. Someone is getting their head chopped off, and they literally do. I love that moment where Vaemond screams at Rhaenyra's face whore, and even before that, Daemon warns him, say it, I dare you. And that is so true to Daemon's character. This dude ain't the stepdad. He's the dad that stepped up. The way he cares for Rhaenyra, the way he protects her, the way he protects her children, and really protects the Targaryen family name. It brings us back to the ending of episode 2, where he first makes a deal with Corlys and does not allow that man to besmirch Viserys' name. Daemon will speak of his brother and of his entire family as he pleases, but no one else that does not hold the name Targaryen will. And I love this dude wastes no time. As soon as Vaemond says it, you don't even catch Daemon on camera. The dude's just walking to tear their dude's head off in front of everyone. And this courtroom scene is incredible. It feels like a climax at the very beginning of the episode, where you still have about half an hour of story to go. And this is all due because after leaving King's Landing for 6 years, after marrying Daemon, after making a home for herself in Dragonstone, Rhaenyra understands Viserys does not have much time left. He can barely walk, he struggles to breathe, he has constant hallucinations, he is slowly dying to the point he does not even attend council meetings. They are now headed by Alicent, who sits at the head of the table, right next to the Hand of the King, her father. There is striking imagery all through the first half of this episode, building up the tension to that tribunal scene, from Alicent donning the Targaryen blacks to Otto Hightower himself sitting on the Iron Throne, visually exerting powers over titles and a heritage, emotionally pitting Rhaenyra into this desperate corner where she attempts to bargain with Rhaenys Velaryon for the lives of her children. But Rhaenys blames Rhaenyra for the murder and the death, the mysterious death of Laenor. She does not know her son is alive. And just that moment in front of the Tree of the Seven between these two is sensational. This episode finally gives the Velaryons a time in the spotlight, and Eve Best maximizes every frame she has in this episode. It's amazing. The bargain that Rhaenyra suggests, though, is the marriage of Lucerys and Baela Velaryon together once more, yet another generation of Valyrian houses. And while at first Rhaenys rejects this notion, she just wants to hurt Rhaenyra, she wants to side with the Hightowers and give them all the power to strangle a little bit more of Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. Everything is coming to a head in that courtroom scene. But after seeing Vaemon's head chopped off, and after those doors blow open with Viserys hunched, almost dragging his own body through the hall onto the Iron Throne, demanding for Lord Hightower to get his ass off that seat. A mesmerizingly complex portrayal of strength and vulnerability all at once as Viserys struggles to keep his realm and his family from crumbling apart, and even when he's about to succumb to his weakness, Daemon picks him up. He will not allow his brother or the Targaryen family to stumble and fall, illustrating this morally reprehensible character's incorruptible sense of devotion to his entire family. This man is basically melting on screen with incredible makeup. This is some of the best makeup work I have seen in my entire life. And of course, there's a lot of CGI work specifically on his face when it takes his mask off later at the dinner scene. But this moment where Paddy Considine, giving an Emmy-worthy performance, drags his own body onto the Iron Throne and delivers the title of Lord of the Tides to his grandchildren, the children of Rhaenyra, is one of the most powerful, imposing moments of any character in this show. It is magnificent. The hairs on my arm were standing up. That is how good this moment is. This man fighting for his life and still fighting for the future of his family, which is what brings us onto that dinner scene after the tribunal hearings are done, and Rhaenys just steps out and she says, yes, I'll marry my granddaughter to Lucerys. Like, I don't want to die in here, man. I don't even care for Vaemond that much. Velaryon blood clearly does not run as thick for Rhaenys as it does for Daemon, because if you talk shit about a Targaryen, you better not let Daemon hear it. But now let's talk about that dinner scene, which begins with this big gap between the seats of Alicent and Rhaenyra. It's such an awkward Thanksgiving-like scene where Viserys whimpering his way to the seat between them, and it's just very heartwarming. There's a lot of strained relationship, a lot of anguish in between these two houses, and how they've passed that on to the next generation is so clear. But Paddy Considine continues to crush it in this scene as Viserys just seeks for his family to make amends. This man is hallucinating, this man is dying, but he is not blind. He knows these people are angry at one another, and he knows why, but the future of House Targaryen depends on it. And it's a beautiful moment when you finally see Olivia Cook, who, again, crushes it, making this role her own. And you clearly see Alicent's heart breaking for her husband, due in great part, I'm sure, because of what happened to Sir Lionel and Sir Harwin Strong, as she sees how much it is destroying their house, how much it is tearing the Targaryen family apart, and she is ready to make amends with Rhaenyra, who also extends her hand. But in keeping up with the show's sense of real stakes, where characters' actions and decisions have dire, significant consequences on the plot, ever changing it, we see how the hatred, vitriol, and sorrow between the two former best friends has already infected the next generation, and one-eyed Aemon Targaryen seeks now to poke and tease at his nephews, calling them the bastards that Vaemond Velaryon called them in front of everyone, but now in this intimate setting where family is supposed to be in a harmony, and we see how much Viserys is affected by this. And we also see how much of a little bastard Aegon Targaryen is. This dude is such a Joffrey. From the beginning of the episode, we even see how Alicent is trying to protect him as he keeps raping and pillaging, and Alicent can only be a mother. Which again, I'm not agreeing, but it continues to display these characters as morally gray. No one is perfect, no one makes these decisions looking out for themselves, but altruistic decisions do not necessarily yield good actions or results. It's exactly what makes these characters emotionally complex, nuanced, and so compelling to watch, and this dinner scene has it all. I love this moment where Daemon does not say anything, but he just crosses eyes with Aemon, and Aemon knows when to step back. He knows, I'm not gonna mess with this dude. I'm not gonna mess with my great uncle, because he's no fun to play around with. I'll be fucked. This scene is so important to illustrate Alicent's regret, but also to illustrate that through line of the Targaryen Dynasty fracturing generation after generation. That sense of self-destruction where the pursuit of self-preservation is exactly what is destroying them from within. There's a great prophetic full circle sense to the way the storyline is playing out, and this scene is amazing. It is one of my favorite scenes of this entire season, and even when Alicent appeals to Rhaenyra to stay, this woman now is looking out for her children. She's going to have her children be safe in Dragonstone, and then she'll be back, because the two friends are genuinely willing to make peace with one another, to fix their house if they can. But as in real life, the moment you start to rehabilitate, the moment you start to make progress, you will relapse, you will stumble. And that's where this episode leaves us on, as Viserys, as we see his face with no cheek, one eye is gone, this disgusting scene where this monstrous looking being is completely vulnerable towards his family, and after that, as Alicent takes him to bed to care for him continuously. This is what a dedicated wife looks like. Viserys hallucinates that this is Rhaenyra, or at least this was my reading of it. The show does not make it clear, and I actually like that it doesn't make it clear, but to me, Viserys is believing this person is Rhaenyra, and he once more brings up the prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire. The lines of war are now once more drawn in between Rhaenyra and Alicent, as the queen now believes she is the one true savior of the Targaryen bloodline, and even the entirety of Westeros. There's great subtlety to Olivia Cook's performance in this moment at the very end of this episode, but it shows her convicted of what she must do, despite having just been ready to make amends with the damage she and Rhaenyra, as she continuously blames her, created, and I cannot wait to see it. So while this episode at the very beginning was quite jarring to get adjusted, this does not give us time to get acclimated to anything. It just thrusts us into this new era, into all these new characters, seeing these new versions of the young kids, where poor Sir Criston, he was one of the main characters, as now he's getting ass-kicked by Aemon Targaryen, one-eyed Aemon. But before we go ahead and chop some more heads off with my final thoughts on this week's House of the Dragon, I need you to start the conversation about it in the comments below. Let me know all your thoughts on this week's. If I forgot to say anything, call me out on it down there. And if you're enjoying my weekly House of the Dragon reviews, there's more reviews right up here. If you're enjoying this specific House of the Dragon review, or if you just love movies and TV, this is the place to be, so consider clicking that subscribe button and you won't miss any future House of the Dragon or conversations on your favorite movies and TV. I fully understand the complaints in regards to the show's overall inconsistent pacing. We get to spend several episodes in a singular time period, but then have these despairing time jumps every now and then that don't give us time to acclimate to any of the characters, some of them major players in this story, and I actually agree with those complaints. But to me, the slow burn intensity of this intimate family thriller where the characters just plays out so well with real complexity and emotional nuance, where once more House of the Dragon strikes awe-inspiring balance between immense story scope and intimate character-driven drama. Every emotional beat feels earned, every interaction and key plot point feels weighty, and it changes drastically the direction of these characters and the story itself. And it feels so gratifying to see long-term storytelling with seeds that were planted so long ago early in the season reaping rewards within the story and for us, the audience. It makes our emotional investment matter. And that is what I make of this week's House of the Dragon. Let me know what you make of it in the comments below. How do you rank all 8 episodes right now? Anything and everything down there. Thank you so much for joining me weekly for all the House of the Dragon reviews. I'll be back next week, and thank you to my channel members for always supporting the channel. Until the next one, love each other and love the movies.